Hello and welcome to CBC's Volunteer Training on Bloodborne Pathogens. In today's training, we will be learning what bloodborne pathogens are, how to prevent exposures to bloodborne pathogens, and what to do in the event of an exposure to bloodborne pathogens. CBC is dedicated to providing a safe workplace for all volunteers and staff. We are focused on a proactive approach to preventing workplace exposures and injuries. We also want to build a safe environment for all employees and volunteers. At this point, you may be wondering what bloodborne pathogens are. Bloodborne pathogens are pathogenic organisms present in human blood that cause disease in humans. A few examples you have probably heard of are HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and other pathogens, such as those that cause malaria. In order to reduce the risk of exposure to these types of pathogens, CBC conducted a risk assessment to determine the level of risk for volunteers and staff dependent on the task performed. Category 1 is the highest level of risk and refers to employees that have direct contact with blood via collection or processing. Category 3 is the lowest level of risk and contains volunteers and staff that have no direct contact with blood or blood processing. As volunteers, you are designated into Category 3. This includes other departments such as IT, accounting, and HR. Volunteers were placed in this designation for the following reasons. 1. Volunteers do not participate or serve in the process of blood collection, which is the highest risk category. Reason 2. Volunteers do not provide first aid during their volunteer service at CBC, regardless of training or certification. Since volunteers are serving in a blood collection center, there is an inherent level of risk during their service. In order for CBC to be prepared and care for our volunteers and employees, an exposure control plan was created. The exposure control plan serves three main purposes. 1. Provides information on procedures and regulations regarding bloodborne pathogens. 2. Protects employees and volunteers from health hazards associated with bloodborne pathogens. 3. Provides appropriate treatment to employees and volunteers exposed to bloodborne pathogens. The first aspect of the plan relates to blood spills. A blood spill can be a few drops of blood from a leaking bandage or a malfunctioning blood bag. It is outlined in our procedures that volunteers do not clean any blood spills, regardless of how large or how small the spill. Instead, volunteers are expected to find a nearby staff member to clean the spill. Volunteers will help control the area by redirecting traffic or warning others. For volunteers drivers, if you are on the road, we ask you to contain the spill using the blood spill kit in the glove box and drive to the nearest CBC center for staff to clean the blood spill. The next section of the exposure control plan specifies methods to be used to minimize the transmission of bloodborne pathogens in the workplace. These methods include the following. 1. Work practice controls, which reduce the likelihood of exposure by altering how a task is performed. CBC continually evaluates work procedures for more efficient and safe work methods. 2. Engineering controls, which isolate or remove the bloodborne pathogens hazard from the workplace. You may have seen these in the community as sharps disposal containers or self-seething needles. Category 3, universal precautions, which are an approach to infection control that treats all human blood and material contaminated with human blood as if it were infections with bloodborne pathogens. Work practice controls relate to the way our policies and procedures are developed, tested, implemented, and validated. CBC is consistently evaluating work procedures and policies based on the best practices from research, as well as regulation changes from the Food and Drug Administration, otherwise known as the FDA. CBC also offers extensive training and approval to volunteers and employees to ensure they are prepared for the task they are about to perform. Engineering controls relates to how we control and manage contaminated materials and isolate them for safety. We do this via the unique biohazard symbol. The biohazard signs are orange and red in color with black lettering. This symbol is posted on equipment and containers that hold or use biohazard materials, including materials that have been contaminated with human blood. Volunteers do not handle equipment or containers marked with a biohazard label. Only trained staff are able to handle any of this equipment. Universal precautions are actions taken by all of us to assume all blood is contaminated and take reasonable and proactive steps to prevent exposure. The largest precaution that can be taken is washing your hands. It is recommended to wash your hands for a minimum of 20 seconds. Humming happy birthday is the recommended length of time for the best cleaning of your hands. And wash the top of your hands, in between your front fingers and underneath your nails. Universal precautions also includes other barriers that we use to prevent potential exposure. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, is specialized clothing or equipment worn for protection against infectious materials, including blood. PPE is mainly used by employees collecting blood or processing blood. The different types of PPE include gloves, glasses, lab coats, and face shields. While we take every step to prevent exposures, occasionally exposures will occur. In order to ensure proper care to our volunteers and employees, CBC has created the following exposure plan. If you experience an exposure to blood, the steps are as follows. 1. Immediately flood the exposed area with water and clean any wound with soap and water or a skin disinfectant. 2. Report the exposure to your nearest CBC supervisor. 3. Complete an employee work injury, illness, and biohazard exposure report. As a volunteer with CBC, you are covered under workmen's compensation coverage while following all policies and procedures outlined by CBC at the time of the injury. In closing, safety is everyone's responsibility. Everyone has a role in maintaining a safe workplace at CBC. Whether volunteer or staff, it is expected that everyone, 1. Be aware of your environment and follow all procedures and policies. 2. Report any work hazards to your supervisor immediately. 3. Report any injuries or exposures to your supervisor as they occur. And 4. Help maintain a safe environment. Thank you for attending Bloodborne Pathogens Training. To receive credit for this training, please complete the quiz at the link located in the description box beneath this video. Thank you.